Whitehead. There are two people that you never see in a room together, Chad Whitehead and Steven Tyler, because I think that sometimes they're bots because they're so smart. And listen, before I get into anything particular, I thought a News 9 story, some really great news that there is going to be live music in this town before the end of the year. Chad, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I definitely can. First off, I just want to say good morning to both of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Tower Theater did announce a very small, very socially distanced show that will be on September 11th with Bonnie Bishop, who is an incredible, soulful singer. She's a real treasure in the Americana world and a real Tower favorite. And it's an opportunity to try our social distance kind of COVID concert setting, which means we'll have a total of 200 people in the room instead of 1,000. Everyone will be in seats, in tables, kind of in small groups. And then instead of offering drinks at the bar, we'll actually be having table service to try to minimize the amount of people coming and going. Obviously, we're going to require masks anytime you're not in your seat drinking a beverage. It's really a social contract to see if we can do this together safely with artists and with the community. And so we're extremely hopeful, but we got to try it. And so far, we've gotten great support from county health officials, or state health officials, and the city. So we're cautiously optimistic. Does not really change any of the realities for independent venues. It's not really an economic success story, but it's encouraging, and it will give our crew some work, and it will give live music fans an opportunity to come support a show in person.
Can I ask one more question before we get down to business? I did, maybe 3 weeks ago, did a Facebook Live from the Tower studio, which is where these all began, and then until what happened to Tower, and then we moved this to Jones, Oklahoma with my architect, Steven Tyler, the real Steven Tyler. And so we did, for the first time I was back in Tower studio with Steven about 3 weeks ago, and we were going to do some a broadcast, a Facebook Live with Congresswoman Horn about Save Our Stages. The Save Our Stages initiative, well, we know that Congress, the Senate hasn't taken anything up. Chad, could you tell us where that's at? I know it's kind of off to the side right now, but what you're hearing about the future of Save Our Stages and the importance of that.
So the Save Our Stages PR campaign was started by the National Independent Venue Alliance to really raise awareness for how critical the situation is for independent venues. We're not talking about Live Nation rooms or AEG rooms. We're talking about mom and pop, Main Street, USA, independent venues like Tower Theater, like 89th Street Collective, lots of venues in Oklahoma City like that. We're all facing a nationwide crisis. The estimates are that 90% of independent venues could close. Tower's in a little bit better situation, thanks in part to the city's specific plan that's going to earmark some CARES dollars to support independent venues. The reality, though, is that just Tower is facing a $2 to $3 million revenue shortfall in 2020. And so it's going to take a national success story. It's going to take state funding, county funding, city funding. It's really going to take a lot of things if we want to preserve what live music does for our economy and for our culture all across America.
Commissioner, your career was in public health before you became commissioner, Blumert, and you see the challenges that people like Chad and all across the state think about, not only Tower, but Kane's Ballroom in Tulsa, places like that. This is not only an economic issue, but it's a health issue, and you're attuned to both of those.
Yeah. And when I was in school for public health, we learn about the health side of what a pandemic can do, but I don't ever remember learning about the economic side of what a pandemic does to a community and right now to the entire world. So that was, Chad and I talked many times before our CARES money flew out the window about utilizing county CARES dollars in addition to city CARES dollars to help small businesses, including groups like the Tower Theater.
It's a tough time. And how's that for? It's been said a gazillion times. All right, let's thank you for that. And Chad, let us know what we can tell people about. By the way, is the concert, the first one, the comeback concert, so to speak, is it sold out?
No, I think people are taking caution, which I certainly understand and appreciate. So we'll see. We did have an early reaction. We've had a lot of excited people. If you haven't heard Bonnie Bishop, you just give her 10 minutes of your time, and whether you decide to come to the concert or not, I think you'll really appreciate her musical just gift. And she's just an incredible artist. So I'm excited for the show. I think it's going to be a great night at Tower Theater.
All right, so remember that. Remember to support those great folks, because I don't want to, this is completely from my heart. I mean, yes, Mitchell Talks has been in Tower Theater many times. Steven Tyler is a dear friend and a mentor to both me and to my son, who is, if he hadn't had the training that Steven Tyler had given him, we couldn't have pulled off all these Facebook Lives from between Jones and Choctaw, Oklahoma. I mean, this is somebody who was kind of critical of me Sunday over my interview with Commissioner Calvi, and then I told people, look, we're going to do it for a couple more days, get both sides. The fact is that we're kind of it. I mean, there's not really any place else in Oklahoma media right now where you can go into long, in-depth discussions about topics. And frankly, we couldn't have done this without the thoughts of and the mentoring of Steven Tyler. So we appreciate that very, very much. One quick more, as they say, Chad. I think a lot of people are saying, well, we have these venues and you can be socially distant. Why aren't they scheduling a lot of concerts? Well, I'm not sure that Ray Wiley Hubbard and Ray Benson are touring anyplace else. I mean, for you as a talent buyer, it's very difficult to get people to come to Tower Theater because people aren't making those long tours, right?
That's correct, Scott. There is not a way for an artist to really tour in the normal sense right now. If you think about a tour being 9 to 15 people piled into a tour bus, moving from city to city all across America, performing 6 days out of 7 across a 40-day stretch, the odds of you successfully completing that tour without having a COVID outbreak amongst your crew is next to nothing. And so a lot of artists would love to be out touring, but they don't want to risk their crew and they don't want to risk their fans' safety. And so it's a delicate balance, and every artist has their own things to consider. But the reality is there's just not artists out there for me to go try to bring to Oklahoma City into Tower Theater. So there'll be a few in the next year and a half. But right now we're seeing shows move all the way off of 2021 and into 2022. And I think the larger the tour and the larger the artist, the further away those tours are going to be. So if you love massive concerts at places like Chesapeake Energy Arena, I don't see those coming back anytime soon.
Well, that's a great way to start the Tuesday. But thanks for all you're doing, Chad, and all your folks down there at Tower Theater, and a great crew that has been through some tough times. Well, let's get to the issue at hand. Commissioner, we have Saturday had hot seat with Commissioner Calvi, and we had a great deal of time yesterday about this issue. The first thing that I need to clear up that's on my end, I keep putting in the post, it's 36 million, it's 34 million. Could you help us out with precisely what the county commissioners did? And I want to thank Storm Jones yesterday for helping me out by saying, he said the vote was 2-0 officially. We weren't sure if it was 2-1. So more media errors. You just can't trust that media. So could you start with what the vote was and actually how much money went to the jail trust?
So there actually were 3 different votes to send 3 different amounts of money to the jail trust. The 2 smaller amounts, one was $3 million to do some repairs and upgrades to the heat and air system inside the jail. There was another $3 million that we voted on to provide hazard pay to detention officers inside the jail. So that's $6 million. The agenda item for the larger amount, 34 million is floated around, 36 million is floated around. It was 36 million, and I apologize for the construction sounds in the background. It was 36 million on the agenda item, but verbally during the vote, which I was not present for, It was verbally said as 34 million, and that is what was voted on. And we found out after the fact that the reason for 34 million was that 2 million was left back to the county for internal needs that we still have inside this building related to COVID. So it was 34 million, 3 million, and 3 million. So it actually ended up being 40 million. That is total going to the jail trust of $47 million that we received back in April.
Let me give this question to both of you. From a general standpoint, tell me what was wrong with what the commissioners did the other day. Carrie, you go first, and then Chad, jump in.
So if anyone was following any of our meetings or you want to go back and see them, we addressed an item a couple weeks ago to provide rental and utility assistance to people who had lost their jobs or lost income due to COVID. That $1.5 million for that program was heavily vetted. It went through our committee, our budget committee, it went through our budget board, and it went to our county commissioners. And that whole process, the attorney for our home finance authority, which is who would be administering the program, came to every meeting, answered questions, had paperwork, had a contract in place, had an indemnification clause in place, and it was thoroughly vetted. And then when it came to the budget board, lots of questions were asked, and it was very well thought out. That is the process those things were supposed to go through. With these items, it didn't go through any of our committees, specifically our budget committee. It did come to budget board, but there really was no discussion, and the attorney for the jail trust was never present. He was never present, and there was never an official ask from the jail trust. With the Home Finance Authority, they had a separate meeting. They took a vote. They voted, yes, we want to do this, and that was their official ask to the commissioners. So to say that this process was normal and typical is not correct. Because by the time it came to the commissioners, the 34 million and the 3 million and 3 million, it really hadn't gone through many of the correct processes, and there really was no paperwork or documentation backing up how the money was going to be spent or if the jail trust even wanted it.
Chad?
You know, I think if I have a great idea, and I really believe that my idea is the best path forward, part of realizing that great idea is to share it in a way that everyone can get on board, and we can have a thorough vetting of my idea to see if it's the best path forward. And if I really believe it is, I need to put that work in. I need to whip that to the point where there's a coalition of people that agree that the idea is the best path forward. The reason I'm outraged by everything that's happened within the county politics and this CARES money is it feels like if the argument was so strong that this money basically all needed to go to the jail trust, we could have had that discussion. People could have weighed in and listened and shared why this was such an important and really the best use of this money. I'm not seeing that took place. Certainly it didn't take place in a 47-second county meeting, which was my first meeting to be in attendance at ever. I didn't know that. Level. Yeah, so...
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. I was expecting the standard Pledge of Allegiance, opening prayer, things of that nature. It was absolutely whiplash watching all of that play out. And so I just look at it from a big picture. If it's such a great plan, then there was no need to rush it. There was no need for secrecy. There was no need to ram this thing through. There was time for discussion. I know that things have to move quickly because people's lives are at stake because of the devastating impact of COVID, but we still could have had discussion. We could have taken time to really weigh this out, because this is a lot of money and there's a lot of hurting people in Oklahoma County.
And there's nothing I'm going to ask you that I haven't asked Commissioner Calvi. And I think a lot of people, when you have cameras in a room, it changes the dynamics of this. And I think the optics of that were not good. He said, I don't want to overstate it, but that weren't good. Commissioner Blumert, what were you told about the quickness? And by the way, Chad, be grateful because, government usually takes, many hours. You lose 8 years. So 47 seconds on something, that's not bad for your first meeting. But in all seriousness, Commissioner, the thoughts about the length of that meeting?
I have waited on Commissioner Mon. We both waited on Commissioner Mon a few times. We've waited on Commissioner Calvi a few times. So starting the meeting right at 9 a.m. sharp has never been a big concern of our board. We typically start within 2 or 3 minutes of 9 o'clock. The quickness of it not only was disrespectful to me and my staff member that was sitting for me, Joe Blau, I believe it was disrespectful to the voters and the citizens, people like Chad, who wanted this money to be spent in a logical and thoughtful way to help people, and to vote on it that quickly and not allow public comment, not allow discussion. I think it's disrespectful to the taxpayers, who this is their money. Yes, these CARES dollars came from the federal government, but all tax dollars are the people's money. And if it takes us an hour of sitting there hashing through issues to spend 30 something million dollars, then we need to do that. So I think the quickness of it, I can echo what Chad said. I don't understand why you would want to go so quickly if you really thought your plan was the most sound plan.
It's interesting. I think people don't understand this in terms of the commission. You really can't. Well, there's only 3 commissioners. Okay. Right. So if you are at a restaurant and you bump into a commissioner, it's basically a meeting. And if you talk to each other, that's illegal. Correct? Am I oversimplifying this thing? So my question then becomes, the votes were there. So even if you had been on time, it would have been 2-1 vote, more than likely.
Right.
So what's the motivation for the chair, which is Commissioner Calvi? What would the motivation be to risk that optic? What do you think the agenda was?
There were a lot of people watching. It was Chad's first meeting. There were a lot of members of the public who had shown up, who were getting upset and agitated and speaking up. And part of that was because we didn't have public comment on the agenda, which I had been working on for a little while, and it just hadn't gotten back onto the agenda. So I think people were upset that we were voting on something so large with no public comment. And it seemed to me that he wanted to avoid having to interface with some of those protesters. Again, Commissioner Calvi and I have never spoken face-to-face about this because we're not permitted to discuss county business outside of a meeting. Some counties, their district attorney has a more loose interpretation of the Open Meetings Act, and commissioners can discuss county business outside of a meeting. They just cannot come to an agreement. They have to express their intent and their vote in an open meeting. But here in Oklahoma County, our DA interprets that law a little bit more narrowly and says that we cannot discuss county business outside of meetings. So I didn't know that vote was going to happen in that manner. Had no idea that that's how that was going to happen until I walked in the door.
Richard asked exactly, if you need to move things quickly so that people can be helped with CARES Act money, why is a huge chunk of that jail trust money unallocated, and it is not even promised that it will be allocated until the end of the year? And so let me dovetail with what thank you, Richard, for your question. And thank you, Lisa, for watching. In some ways, Commissioner Calvi's really kind of out there twisting by himself. I'm curious as to why the jail trust, there's 9 people on that board, some who show up, some who don't show up for those meetings. But let's just say that everybody agreed that the money, for example, all the money should go there. All right, this is all theoretical. But even today, there's no idea. And I've asked Commissioner Calvi, he says, well, they're going to meet and they're going to have an agenda. But the biggest problem from an objective point of view is that's a chunk of money going somewhere where people are telling us, well, we're gonna do something with it. And I'm kind of surprised the jail trust is letting Commissioner Calvi twist in the wind right now. They actually owe the public right now. They need to get 10-8 and letting us know what the heck you're going to do with that money, regardless of whether or not you were for or against it going there. Now, what are you going to do with it?
And Chad, you were at the jail trust meeting yesterday. A lot of people are starting to show up to these jail trust meetings, which I think is a really good thing. And the jail trust yesterday did allow some public comment. But you're right, Scott. They have not released a plan or publicly stated how they would spend this money. And I communicate pretty frequently with Francie Ekwerekwu, who is my appointee on the trust. And even, she's one member of 9. And so even she hasn't been, no one's communicated with her about what their intent is with that money. So it's a very fair point you bring up, Scott. That would be my next thing that I would like to see from them.
I think that'd be across the board for all the commissioners on this. Let me get to a statement you just made, Commissioner, and Chad, let's get this out here. Commissioner Calvi said Saturday on Hot Seat and also yesterday that there was lots of public comment. Your thoughts, both of you, on if there was robust public input into this?
Chad, you can go.
Well, Scott, I the first county meeting I'd ever attended in person lasted 47 seconds, erupted in frustration and other things. So I have not witnessed any public comment at the county level. The jail trust has allowed for public comment, which I really appreciate Tricia Everest's commitment to trying to make that happen in a challenging environment. And I should just note, to jump back in on that last question, I'm going to reserve judgment on what the jail trust plans to do with that money. I know that Tricia is working on that, and I have my doubts, and I have the same frustrations that a large percentage of Oklahoma citizens do. But I'm going to wait and see on how that money gets designated. And I do believe, though, that there will be a thorough accounting for every penny. There's no way with this amount of public scrutiny that they're going to mismanage that money now. So we'll see on that. But as far as public comment goes, I called Commissioner Mon's office and left a message with the person who answered the phone. Never received a call back. I called Commissioner Calvi's office. Voicemail wasn't even set up. All the emails had been pulled down from his county page, so there's no way to write an email. So the only public comment that I participated in is in reaching out to my county commissioner, which is Commissioner Blumert, and she has been very gracious in having a dialogue with myself and the rest of the principals at Tower Theater to try to figure out exactly what's going on here. So I wouldn't call this a whole lot of public comment and public discussion.
I want to thank Mandy for watching, and Lauren, we'll get to your questions in just a moment. Let me get to one of the more volatile aspects of what Commissioner Calvi mentioned to me in the last couple of interviews. One is that, Commissioner, that you had some special interest or some giveaways or some favors for some friends. That's not an exact quote. And I think obviously people are wanting to know about that. And also Chad Whitehead here today and the interest in why Chad Whitehead is here. First of all, Chad, let's just take some time to talk about that. Your interest in this particular issue, because it was inferred that there was some sort of special deal afoot and that you might be part of it because you were involved in, as we know, some sort of a controversial incident down there. So I think you've been brought into this. Give us your standpoint about where this was all coming from and what has been said about you.
Thanks, Scott. I'm really proud of my place in my community in Uptown 23rd. I volunteer. I work on behalf of this entire community. And I love this community. I love this city. working for a place like Tower Theater has been the thrill and the challenge of a lifetime. And when COVID hit, immediately we have thrust ourselves into all sorts of small business advocacy, and then not just for ourselves. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm not going to back down from that. We have advocated on behalf of other venues, not just ourselves. We have advocated on behalf of the bars and restaurants that are in our community, the service industry workers who are fighting for their unemployment. We have really tried to leverage Tower into the civil rights conversation that's happening in Oklahoma City. We have a strong commitment to be as engaged in our community as possible. And when this kind of CARES money is spent in a way that I think is inappropriate, that falls right into our line of work, which is to stand alongside our community and to lobby on behalf of what we think is right. And I think every citizen has that as the opportunity for them. I think there's a lot of ways to do that. And that's where it starts to get a little bit challenging when you're trying to coalition build. But yeah, I'm an advocate for a lot of things. And when I see money being spent like that, I'm going to show up. And I'm grateful that I have a flexible schedule that allows me to show up. Not a lot of people can just drop everything and show up downtown in the middle of the day. So as far as the rest of the incident goes, I confess that I'm still in a little bit of a state of shock. I've not been pushed by anyone since like recess. Maybe 8th grade was probably the last time I can think of an encounter that even got close to what I experienced last Wednesday. And I don't think it's appropriate for anyone to be subjected to any kind of unwanted physical touch, period. I think it's even more inappropriate for an elected official and a barred attorney to behave in such a manner. And I'm still really trying to process what that means for myself, what that means for our county and for our leadership.
If I could, Commissioner, before I hand it over to you, for the record, I asked Commissioner Calvi what happened. He said that he held his hand out and you ran into it. Your response?
I weigh 190 pounds, and the force of his hand on my chest brought me to a stop. If you watch that video, which I'm very grateful for Ty and the Black Times that he just happened to have a camera rolling. If you listen to the video, you can actually hear my shoes squeak on the marble floor, and so it was enough force that it brought me to a standstill. And I'm a big boy. I'm 6'5", almost 200 pounds, and so I categorically reject the version of events that was shared on your program yesterday.
All right. So just for the record, that's not where I like to go. I have people all the time say, ask them this, ask them that. And I try to maintain a high level of civil discussion. But since it was on the record, I wanted to give you a chance to do that. And remind people that at Tower Theater, there are the Twin Towers, if you're ever wanting to put a basketball team together. So,
no.
Okay. Commissioner, your thoughts. Let me just ask you this, and I've already stepped on the question I asked you previously, but it was inferred that there were special deals. Did you have special deals with constituents that you were planning to bring to the table?
No. I'm laughing because I have no idea what he's referring to. My special deals with constituents is that I listen to them. And I take their phone calls, and I take their emails, and I answer their tweets and their text messages. And I'm just here to try to listen to them and get this money out into the community. So there were no special deals other than listening to the needs of my constituents.
And if I could just jump in real quick, Scott, it was Carrie's tweet about that CARES money at the county level that was Tower's first indication that might be an opportunity. We pursued that just like we pursued federal plans, state plans, city plans, even grants within the arts. We are fighting for the life of our business and pursuing all leads. And that's all we were doing.
Could you take some questions from the Facebook audience?
Sure.
Mark Myers, hello, Mark. He says there's no county policy procedure that would restrict the public from attending a news conference at a public meeting room in Oklahoma County. And I think that's central to the issue there. Jonathan Dodson asked me to ask you, Chad, are you a bully?
And I thanks for letting me speak to that. I am obnoxious, and I'm a real pain in the ass if I've got a bee in my bonnet. But I've been a pacifist for over a decade now. That stems from 15 years of full-time service as a minister. I'm still technically ordained.
I didn't know that.
I've got a 9-year-old son that I have to look in the eye every day, and he's going to keep me accountable for my behavior much more than social media or commissioners or news journalists are going to. I am none of the things that I've been accused of. I'm not volatile, I'm not nasty, and I'm definitely not a bully.
Melissa asks, was a legal opinion ever delivered from Oklahoma County DA or Jail Trust Council to, I suppose Melissa is asking, to the board or any of the organizations that were deliberating, Commissioner?
So I'm trying to think of when the 9 questions were written up. Myself and our treasurer, Butch Freeman, put together 9 questions for our DA's office. And for those of you watching, the district attorney serves as general counsel for the Board of County Commissioners, as well as the budget board. We pay them. We have a contract with them. They are our attorneys. So Butch and I wrote up these 9 questions. We gave them to the DA's office. And now that the money has been transferred to the trust, Butch and I believe that it is now the legal counsel for the trust that needs to answer those questions. A lot of it has to do with how to spend the money and how to track it and the legality of that. So in the trust meeting yesterday, they officially received those questions so that their counsel can look those over and hopefully give a response. The fine line that we play with our DA's office is, yes, they are our general counsel, but they are also the prosecuting body in the county. And so I'm always mindful of that. So those questions are now with John Michael Williams, who is the legal counsel for the jail trust.
Where's the story going on, Commissioners? The jail trust met yesterday, but I think today's an election day, and so tomorrow all the air in the room is going to be sucked out of it over election results. Thursday, we start the general election, and Commissioner Mon has an election. And so where do we go from here?
What I've been telling people, what I've been putting on all my social media is pay attention as best you can to the jail trust and how they spend that money and what they say publicly in their meetings. That is kind of the option we have right now, is to really, really hold that trust accountable. And as with any news cycle, right now, this is what everyone's talking about and getting involved in. And tomorrow we'll find out the results of the election and things could change. So my hope is that people will continue to stay engaged and so county government, it's not the coolest, sexiest version of government. And when I was running for this seat and the first year and a half I was here, it was really hard to get people to be invested and pay attention and be interested. And unfortunately, it took something this large to kind of get people interested and involved. So that is, for me, that's kind of the silver lining of all of this, is that people are starting to pay attention to what's going on here.
Kelly has asked for emails, and they have been put up there. Thank you, David. Krista says we need more people to show up. Next meeting is Monday. It starts at 1 p.m. Kelly also asks, what is the recourse now to get the decision recalled? Is there one, Commissioner?
Recalled meaning the money?
I'm not sure.
So
let's just talk about the decision first, and then perhaps the money. I also saw where maybe one of the commissioners, the jail trust people said, we're not even sure we can return it.
Right. I don't know that answer either. I don't know the legality of a public trust returning money to the county, which we are their beneficiary. That would be a question for probably John Michael Williams, their trust. I would hope that they can return it, because if we get to September 30th, September 15th, and they realize we're going to have $15 million left, or we're going to have $10 million left, let's give this back to the county with ample time for the county to spend it, because we know that the deadline is December 30th. So I don't know. Was it Kelly that asked that question?
Yes.
That's a very good question, because I don't know the answer yet.
That's what she says, yes. So, all right. So let's get a couple more questions here. Nick, I've been talking to Nick. I wish we'd ask Calvi what his angle was. He's a career politician and knew what he was doing. You should be asking Calvi all these questions. I have. All right. And Carrie staff has placed her number right there. Also, Richard mentions that John Michael Williams is counsel for the jail. Can we send him comments, he asks?
Questions?
Yes.
I would think so. I'd have to ask him if I can give out his contact information. Chad, was he at the jail trust meeting yesterday? I think he was.
I'm still trying to learn all the names of all the players involved, so I'm not sure.
John Michael is the general counsel for the jail trust, and he is also general counsel for several other of our public trusts, as well as city public trusts. That is kind of his wheelhouse.
Also, I would say, and back to Nick's comment, all right, so you can go to news9.com/your-vote-counts. You can see the 4 minutes with Commissioner Calvi Saturday. You can see the nearly hour yesterday, and I think the answer to the questions are there. Kathy Cummings. Hi, Kathy. And I am so missing Fat Tony. That's between us. That is a dish that is wonderful at Vito's. She says, Commissioner Calvi said Oklahoma City and the state received CARES money to help with people facing evictions, food insecurity, utilities, and more, and that it's not the county's responsibility. Who's going to help the hundreds whose evictions are on the docket next week, and other issues? I can tell you what Commissioner Calvi said. He goes, that's not our expertise. The state has 25 times more money. They know what they're doing. We could get into some legal problems. Commissioner, your thoughts?
So that $1.5 million that we got allocated to rental and utility assistance is specifically going toward people who live in the county but don't live in Oklahoma City. So Jones, Choctaw, Bethany, Edmond, War Acres, all of those folks. And that was really, really important to me, because the state and the city were pooling their eviction protection money into one program. And I felt it was important that the county put in money as well, so that everyone can be served. So that program, we as county staff are not administering that program. We are using our home finance authority, and they are partnering with Community Cares, which is where the city and state are putting all their eviction protection money to administer that program. So Commissioner Calvi's right. We don't do these programs on a regular basis, but we're also in the middle of a global pandemic. And we've received $47 million from the federal government to respond to a global pandemic. And government needs to be agile enough to be able to respond and serve the public in a time of crisis. Doesn't mean that we need to take on a whole bunch of new programs, but it means we need to partner with people who know what they're doing and utilize the resources we have to serve the community.
Let me go up to something that Melissa said earlier I didn't want to go past. How do you hold an unelected board accountable for $40 million? It's a good question.
So they are liable, in addition to the county and the commissioners, especially the members of the trust. And I don't believe... that's getting into the nitty gritty. If Mr. Williams, Greg Williams, the administrator, is liable in any way, I can't speak to that. but those members are liable for how those funds are spent. And if the federal government comes back and says you didn't spend these correctly, it's on the commissioners, but it's also on the trust.
Let me give you a theoretical, which is always dangerous, right? If I had a bunch of money and I was given, like, I need to do something to this studio, the home studio, and I'm take that money and you give me a bunch of money, and I'll call Steven Tyler, for example. And what I would outfit this with different than Steven Tyler, because anybody who knows Steven Tyler knows that he's a Wang computer with legs. And he's always counseling, get the really good stuff. Okay, it lasts longer, those sorts of things. My sense is, and I may be completely out on thin ice here, is that the jail trust really doesn't know what to do with the money just yet. If we're talking about HVAC, if we're talking about upgrades to security and whatnot, I mean, you can pretty much, when you're talking about